Let me point out a couple of very important things. First of all, this is the third World Communication Summit, online summit, or third Davos Communications Summit, which is taking place online. And I really hope that it will be the last one. With many of you, we were visiting the Davos Communications Forum, usually in March or April in the past, before Corona crisis. And now, for one or another reason, we are online and we would like to finish this and we would like to meet each other, I hope, next week in Davos, in a very good mood and full with interesting ideas. We launched the World Communications Forum Association about 10 years ago in the beautiful resort of Davos, with hope to exchange information, to exchange good ideas between us, to exchange, of course, our creative concepts and to have a new partnerships and new friendships in our business. And I think that we reached all those targets. And these days, we can say that we have amazing association full with wonderful members with great ideas. And again, next year, I hope to meet you in person in Davos. Thank you very much for all the executive committee members, to all the board members. Thank you very much for the members of World Communications Forum Association. Thank you very much for our guests. And I would like to open officially the Davos Online Communications Summit on June 7th, 2022. You will have today, my dear friends, wonderful speakers, wonderful participants. And I have the honor to give the floor for an opening keynote speech to my good friend, Francis Ingham, who is not only Chief Executive of ICCO, the World PR Association, which is the most powerful community of public relations forums. He's not only the Director General of PRCA, the largest PR association in the world, representing United Kingdom. But also, Francis is a great expert, extremely ethical professional who has amazing experience, and he can share this experience with us. The topic of our summit today is the new PR world. Look ahead, rethink, change, succeed. And all of us, we would like to succeed. And I hope that Francis Ingham will advise us how to make it. Francis, you have the floor.
Maxim, thank you very much indeed. It's been my great pleasure to work with you for about a decade now, I suppose. And your leadership of ICCO was exceptional, and I thank you for it. And it would be great to meet in person in Davos. Davos is a beautiful place, and an awful lot better than doing this via Zoom. But next year, there we go. So I'm going to address the broad subject of challenges and opportunities ahead of our industry as COVID recedes into the background. And in large part, my comments were based on the ICCO World Report, but supplemented by my broader perspective and attached to some thoughts about the direct impact of COVID and the impact of Russia's war against Ukraine and the communications that we can learn from that, plus some thoughts on ethics. And I do apologize, I will be direct about Ukraine and Russia. I hope that doesn't upset anybody. By way of context, the PRCA, as Max said, is the world's largest PR association. 35,000 practitioners. We have our office in London, but we have hubs in Buenos Aires, Los Angeles, Dubai, Singapore, Bangkok, and Hong Kong. So we're a truly global community, open to all who work in PR, whether agency, in-house, freelancer, university student, whatever. And ICCO is the umbrella body for 42 national associations representing over 3,000 agencies in 81 countries. And Maxim was its president for a couple of years, and grew it enormously, one would have to say. I also sit on the UK Government Strategy and Evaluation Council and was a member of its COVID advisory board for the last 2 years as well. So that's where I draw my perspective from, and I hope it's useful. So going into COVID, the big picture, how did it affect our industry? I made a point every day of speaking with agency heads and in-house communication directors and asking what they were experiencing. And that was all around the world. So not just UK, but everywhere. And I did that so I had a proper perspective on what was happening. The initial feeling was shock. It all began very, very quickly. Nobody had been anticipating it, obviously, and people were rocked by it. Their immediate response was a response of fear, to be perfectly honest. Can we survive what we're going through? And that was true whether agency or in-house. And then everybody started cutting costs, so getting rid of people, getting rid of offices. And that was global as well. And I would say that the support offered to business by governments around the world saved all of our agencies because it gave us that breathing space to survive. Nonetheless, there were redundancies and people lost their jobs, and agencies went under. But I would also say this, as a positive, our industry transformed itself. It changed in 6 months over a period of time that would normally have taken it 10 or 12 years. The move to online digital offering, the change in how we all operate has been remarkable. And then we had a return to stability. And then we now have rapid growth, as I'll address shortly. To my mind, the power and the purpose of our industry has never been more apparent than during these months and years of shock and of challenge. In a world where we couldn't meet, communications underline the salience of what we do between individuals, businesses and consumers, the government in every country trying to help people stay alive at its most blunt level. And what's also obvious to me is that organizations, we spoke about this for a long time, that there was a public shift in expectation, that people expected organizations to have purpose as well as profit at their heart. And that has all been accelerated during COVID. People expect more from their organizations, and that's something we can learn from and bluntly make profit from. So that's my view of COVID. The world has changed in many ways in our favor. quite honestly. So the Eco World Report. So we conduct a report every year that covers the whole of the world and is directed at agency chief execs. The 2020 World Report was the most depressing report I've ever had to write the foreword to. Agency heads were deeply negative about the industry they were representing. But they also said that they believed that once our industry had got through this, that our recovery would be strong, resilient, and vibrant. And they were right, because the most recent World Report contained numbers for celebration. A resurgent industry, growing again, proving its fundamentals were sound. An industry that has the best of both worlds, so old school media relations, which will never go away, thankfully, but also strategic advice, and our industry moving up the regime of advice in every organization. Now, it's important, of course, to recognize we have challenges. We are an industry that's growing, but that has its problems to face. So if we look at those challenges, we're recruiting again, and we're the same size as we were before the pandemic, but we still have an enormous mountain to climb in terms of recruiting and retaining the very best people. To look at the overview and the specifics, I'll make about, I think it's 5 points. Strong global growth and optimism as the industry recovers. So we break down this data by, I think it's 7 regions. So North America, Latin America, UK, Western Europe, Central Europe, Africa, and Asia Pacific, and Australasia. So we break all that data down by region, and we rank it as a score out of 10. So 1 being, we're not very optimistic, 10 being we're very optimistic. Overall, optimism is notably higher than last year. It's a 7.3 out of 10, and it's positive in every region around the world. Expectations of a more profitable year have increased by 50%. And again, that's in every region around the world. 95, as in 95% of agency heads expect to have more client income this year than last year. And for what it's worth, we conducted a PRCA UK market analysis a couple of months ago, and people said that their agencies were growing by 20%, which is pretty typical for our industry and very positive. Where's the growth coming from? IT and tech is number 1. Healthcare is number 2, financial and professional services number 3, and that's been pretty common through the last decade, really. Our members recognise that they need to address the digital needs of their clients, and they are investing in that. So 3 of the top 4 agencies of PR firms are investing in digital. That's 3 of the top 4 top 4 areas. And number 4 is ESG, which I spoke about in Washington a couple of months or so ago. And it's an opportunity for our industry that, frankly, we're not embracing. The top service area is, again, as it has been for a decade, CEOs investing in corporate reputation. They realize the impact it has on their companies and on themselves personally, and they are spending more on it. And again, that is an opportunity for us. The third point would be this. CEOs really are spending far, far more on corporate reputation. And that's a really big opportunity for us. And it elevates us to the top table in a way that we've urged for years and failed to do, frankly. The next point is that measurement and evaluation sophistication continues to increase. So I was in Vienna last week, I think it was last week, at the AMEC, Association of Measurement and Evaluation Communications Organization annual summit, speaking there. The level of investment that our industry is making in evaluation grows every year. So AVEs, advertising value equivalents, are still there, but less and less so with every year. People are using AMEC's tools, which are available for free, to a greater and greater extent. Clients are expecting more sophisticated evaluation rather than just a random number. And all of this plays to our aim of being more and more strategic in what we do. Point number 5, I would say, is that tech remains a golden opportunity. AI is something we don't invest enough in. We will produce a report, which I'll come on to in a moment, later on this year, showing how our industry just doesn't invest in it, and it's a really missed opportunity. In terms of challenges, talent is number one. It has been for a long time. The ICCO World Report has said this for basically every year, and it's become more and more relevant, particularly because of COVID. We have massive pressure on salaries. People are looking to move just because they want a break, that they've had years of working from their kitchen tables, that they're sick of where they work from. So there's going to be a massive exodus of people in our industry. A majority of respondents, agency heads, say that fake news is a problem. Now, Maxim has done a lot of work around this, but it is a significant problem, particularly regarding the stuff that's happening with Russia and Ukraine, which I'll come on to in a moment. 2 out of 3 agency heads say that PR is ethical. That means 1 out of 3 agency heads say it isn't. And that is an issue for our industry. Because if we're not trusted, then there is a significant problem for us going forward. There is basically no change in our industry reflecting the diversity of society that it represents and works with. I made this point last week, but I'll make it again. For all of the work that associations like ourselves and the PR Council and others, and for all of the work that the agency holding groups in the US predominantly have undertaken, the structure of our industry in terms of ethnicity and gender has not changed by anything that is notable. So good words, no effect. And we need to address this. So plenty of stuff to digest. I would say that our industry is in a much better place than I possibly conceived it would have been 2 years ago. And thank you very much indeed for taking the time to listen to my stupid comments. I look forward to seeing you all in the beautiful town of Davos with Maxim wearing his red blazer in the inimitable style that he does.
Francis, really thank you very much. Highly appreciated. You should know, and I'm speaking now on behalf of all our friends and colleagues, we strongly stay by you. So dear friends, I open the floor. If you have any questions to Francis Ingham, please welcome. No questions, so one more time, full support from our side. And we are with you, I mean, always. We are with PRCA, with the honest and fair public relations and public communications business. So on the next topic, I turn now the floor to our good friend, Zsófia Lakatos from Hungary. She will manage the next panel discussion on the key role of PR business in the global recovery, because more or less we did not expect, of course, this stupid fucking, excuse my French, war. But at the end of the day, we are in the process of recovery after the new circumstances after the COVID, which we did not expect. So, Zsófia, please, my dear, introduce the speakers in your panel.
Thank you, Maxim. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Just nod if you can. Okay, cool.
We do.
Wonderful.
We do.
Wonderful. I'm going to be talking to three outstanding individuals, and all three of them are from a different continent. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. First of all, about myself, I'm from Hungary. So this Russia-Ukraine war does have an impact on us as well. You know, we're very close. And somebody here said that you know, not all Russians support the war, and some of them left the country. Not all Hungarians support our prime minister either. And if you don't know what I mean, then just Google it, why I'm saying what Hungary and Hungarian prime minister is doing in connection with this war. But back to our topic. So I am heading my own agency, Emerald PR, and I used to be the president of the Hungarian PR Association. And I'm also on the WCFA Global Advisory Board. And the people that I'll be talking to today are Alasdair Townsend from Brazil, who's managing partner of Sherlock Communications. And you should know that this agency won like all the awards that there are at the Davos Communications Awards. So it was kind of boring watching it because, you know, whatever award it was Sherlock Communications winning. You remember, Maxim, right? They were just outstanding. So we have Alasdair from Brazil. We have Mai Lee from Vietnam, who is the regional country manager at Global PR Hub, and she's an executive committee member of WCFA. And we have Stuart Bruce. I think everybody knows Stuart, but we have Stuart Bruce from the UK, who is a founder and managing consultant of Stuart Bruce Associates and a co-founder of Purposeful Relations. So I'm turning to you guys now. And first, I would like to talk about the people and the people's sentiment. And after that, I would like to talk a little bit about companies and public relations. And if you could react comment on what we were listening to in this keynote speech, I would be very grateful. So the first question to all of you, so Brazil, Vietnam, and UK, is after all these things we are going through, we are in a crisis yet. After the pandemic, a global financial crisis coming up, prices on the rise, war and everything, how do you think the people in your region are mentally, physically, emotionally? Are they frustrated or are they doing okay? Who wants to start? Stuart.
That's actually a really opportune question. There'll be kind of two parts to my answer. I don't actually have the data about how all of the people in the UK feel mentally about the situation, but I do have some very current data on how people in the public relations profession feel. Because yesterday, the Chartered Institute of Public Relations published its annual State of the Profession report. And I think from memory, because I hadn't kept these figures to hand, about half of practitioners expressed that they self kind of identified that they had mental health issues, which is a shocking figure.
So half of the PR professionals in this survey said that they have mental health issues because of all the things that are happening right now.
Yeah, it didn't delve into kind of the detail of the why.
It's serious.
And also what we don't know is how that compares to other sectors, because I just know anecdotally from speaking to kind of friends, whether they work in local government, the health service, law, you know, we've all faced these challenges. And I think the kind of the uncertainty that we're all facing. And I do think that, just kind of to pull it back to public relations for a moment, that we've got a really important role to play here, because actually what the pandemic has done, what the crisis in Ukraine has done, and I used to use the word crisis in Ukraine. Please don't do that. I did it deliberately because it's an invasion, and we've always got to remind people of that it's an invasion. And before all of this happened, I did a lot of work in Ukraine. I have many good friends in Kyiv. I've done work with the Ukrainian government, and just seeing, I think one of the things that has affected my mental health in recent months is seeing friends, so people like me that 6 months ago were public relations professionals sitting at a desk, doing communication strategies, doing media relations, and then you see them posting pictures of themselves on Facebook wearing army fatigues and learning how to fire anti-tank weapons. That could be any one of us on this call. That's the reality of what's happening. And I think that, you know, the kind of the mental health thing is, you know, however we're feeling, for people on the front line like that, it's even worse.
So Stuart, can we say that actually this war, this invasion has the worst effect on our mental health than the pandemic did, because it shows how vulnerable we are, how everything can change from one day to another. And now that we're kind of over the pandemic, or at least we're taking a break before the sixth, how do you call it? Before the sixth session of the virus coming in
Yes.
autumn, you say. So the war is even worse.
I don't think that it's worse. I think it's the cumulative impact that many of us have become used to a kind of comfortable existence, or kind of dealing with kind of things that we've thought of as crises or major issues, that now when we put them into perspective, we actually realize there are much, much bigger things. And I do think that this is the beginning. This is not the end of the kind of the trials and tribulations that we're going to face. And we all need to learn how to become more resilient and how to support each other.
I think that all of us who are in Europe can relate to that a lot. But luckily we have, Alasdair from Brazil, from South America. We have Mayan from Asia, from Vietnam. You guys are like far away from what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. Do you feel it like we do? Does it have any impact on the people there, or is it more of the pandemic that's still taking its toll on the mental health?
I can pick that up from
thanks.
Brazil. Oh, sorry, carry on.
Okay.
Let's start with Alasdair and then we'll go on to Maya. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Sophia, for your introduction and for your question. So, what I can feel that, thanks of God, Vietnam is one of the very peaceful country, even during the pandemics. And what I can recall 1 year ago is at that time in June last year, it was really serious period of time while we suffering the fourth wave of coronavirus. So in Ho Chi Minh City, where I stay, my family stay here, we suffer really seriously from the pandemic. The number of deaths every day was huge and very significant. At that time, people in general feel scared, frustrated, feel like very afraid, feel very pessimistic. But from now, only 1 year later, when we can control the pandemics, what I can assure with you that our life went back to the normal. Thus, a few months ago, we can say the definition of the new normal, but here at this moment, I can say that there's no new normal. It is normal, just only except wearing masks in the crowded area or in the public city. So that's very lucky of us. We still can work, can come to work, can travel, and even we still can organize many big events, gather like hundreds or thousands of people. And you can see in May, we just organized the SEA Games, the 31st SEA Games Festival in Vietnam, and many regional and global country fly in and out to our country to attend the festival. So I think mentally and physically, people in Vietnam get back to the normal. Even our daily life, not really 100% is the same. But I think for the changes, they aren't always bad. From the bad things, we still can keep the positive thinking and we try to adopt with the new thing. So I think the speed of recovering in Vietnam is quite good. We are back to the daily business and practice. So I think it's good for the people doing business here in Vietnam, even for the communicator, because as we are working in PR and communication, we are the communicator. We need to find our key role to communicate, to deliver the positive thinking and positive direction to as an audience. So if we can think in that positive way, so I think we can try to that pandemic and we'll get back soon, hopefully.
Thank you. We will get to that, how the PR's role in positive messages, or what else is our role. But I'd really like to hear what's going on in Brazil. I mean, Alasdair, your country was heavily hit with the COVID.
Yes, and I mean, actually throughout the region, but Brazil specifically, more than 650,000 people died of COVID that we know of. But actually, even beyond the terrible death toll and the medical issue, the financial impact, the economic impact, and particularly the educational impact is still being very keenly felt here. And I think that's going to be the case for a long time. And I think in the context of, we actually at Sherlock, we run reports every year looking at consumers, both media consumption habits, but what they expect from brands. And what's been really striking over the course of not just this year, but the last year as well, is that consumers across the region, but Brazil leading in some ways, really believe that brands should be investing more. I think it's something like 93% of the people we polled across 6 Latin American countries say they believe brands need to be investing more in supporting some of these more contemporary issues. And 17% say that is the number one thing that influences what they think about a brand. So that is, in my opinion, directly related to the impact of COVID here.
So invest more in purposeful.
Absolutely, picking up what Francis said, purpose rather than profit. I think this is now an imperative. But not just that. I mean, I think it is authenticity is crucial in this as well. I mean, what also comes out is that consumers don't want people just to, or brands just to sort of donate to charities and think that's the job done, nor do they want them to be actually supporting causes that don't fundamentally have something to do with stuff that affects their customers or their employees. I think there's authenticity and empathy, I think, is really the key message that comes out here. And it's no longer, good enough just to, pay lip service to this. I think this has become a fundamental in the region, and it's something we're going to see more and more of.
Mm-hmm. That's good to hear. At least we're moving in the good direction. If we have anybody here from Australia, Africa, North America, if you guys could write down in a few sentences in the chat your answer to my question, how are the people in your region, in your continent, that would be greatly appreciated, because we covered South America, part of Asia, covered UK or Europe, but there's, the world is bigger than that. And we're gonna move into the next chapter, which is about companies. I'm turning to Stuart again. This is basically two questions. So first part is, what are, in your opinion, the biggest challenges companies face right now? Not PR agencies, but companies in general. That's the first question. And whether you think that the PR profession, as it is right now, today, June 7th, is capable of supporting companies facing these challenges. And then we're going to move into the future. But let's now talk about the challenges and whether we are there to help.
Thank you. I think Francis covered much of this in his excellent kind of introductory keynote.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we talk about purpose, it's been a buzz phrase in the public relations industry for a long time now. And it's kind of, and then we now talk about ESG instead of CSR. And just to spell out what those two things mean, because I think these are the real challenges for companies. So ESG is environment, society, and governance. CSR is corporate social responsibility. So actually, one of the big challenges for companies is actually understanding what ESG really is and how it has to actually mean something. We've already heard Francis and Alasdair talk about the dissonance between companies making powerful statements about geopolitical issues like the war in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, or about other kind of societal issues that are impacting them. But unless it's actually backed up with deeds, then it's not enough. And that brings us in to the answer to your second question about what can public relations do. I think for me, it's simple. What public relations can do is actually remember what it is. And public relations is not about communications. That is not what we do. If you look at the CIPR definition of public relations, public relations is about reputation, the result of what you do, what you say, and what others say about you. It's the what you do that's really, really important. And that's what the role of public relations should be. We should be advising organizations on behavior, on what the implications of their decisions, the decisions made by the C-suite, by the CEO, what the implications of those decisions are going to be on reputation and relationships. No CEO would make a decision without knowing what the financial implications were going to be and listening to the chief financial officer, or the legal implications and listening to the chief legal officer. We need to be in a position where we're at the level that we can give advice and counsel on reputation and relationships to help the CEO and C-suite make more informed decisions. I think that's where the real opportunity for us lies. And if we go back to kind of what Francis was talking about when he talked about ESG, if we break that down into its three components again, we have environment. There's an entire sustainability industry. And I have many good friends who specialize in this, advising really, really big companies. That's an entire industry. There's an entire industry that deals with governance. They're called lawyers. Now, they may not always do it in exactly the same way as we public relations professionals would approach it, but there's an industry that deals with it. What about the S? Where's the industry that deals with society? and all of those issues, I would argue strongly that's us. That's the opportunity for the public relations profession. We can step into that space and make sure that all three aspects of ESG are treated equally, of equal importance, and we can advise on that aspect. But to do so, the third part of your question was, are we capable? And the simple answer is no. We really, really need to up our skill level. And that's something that Francis talked about, is about one of the kind of the findings that's come out of the ICCO report for the last few years is a massive skills shortage. We really, really need to up our game and we can't just claim to be strategic advisors. We actually have to have the ability to be strategic advisors. And at the moment, we aren't always. There are too many people who just think of it as communications. They might be brilliant at doing media relations or running a social media campaign or putting on an amazing event. That's not public relations in the sense that I see it. That doesn't actually mean that we're capable of providing that strategic management advice. So that's both the opportunity and the threat if we can't fill that gap.
Wow, you really should write a book about that, please. I think it's when I was listening to you, when you first said about the CSR, ESG, PR, I thought that, shoot, you know, I deal with sustainability. I'm a sustainability expert, and I'm also in PR. And I always looked at that as two different things. But now it looks like they're not, because it's like all very much interlinked. And then you brought in the PR should deal with society. That's a very interesting view for me, and I never heard anybody talk about that before. So so really, please do write a book about that, like really, really fast, because our profession needs that, right? Okay, let's go to Marianne. Can you connect to what Stuart said?
Yeah, thanks, Sophia. So from my perspective, for your two questions, first, for the challenges we face, we assume that at the end of any tunnel, there will be a life. So I think after the pandemic, we will be we will back to the right track and get the recovery. But the problem is the recovery speed, the recovery process will be different from industry to industry. For some industry like FMCG or retails, will be we can see the faster or quicker recovery. But in some other industry like transportation, like tourism, like manufacturing, the recovery speed may take longer time, because in such area we need to comply with other department, the local outer government and authority. So it means that it will bring up the huge shift from the local and the regional authority. But for the PR and communicator, I think we also facing this challenge. But the one like Stuart in UK mentioned, we need to advise. And first, as I mentioned at the beginning, we need to reassure about the situation at our country or at our enterprises. So I think that's the first thing we can face and encounter the challenges. The second part is after the pandemic, for communicator, we need to reconnect with our audience, with our TA. In the pandemic period, we may be disconnected or maybe isolated. So now when we are back, we need to reconnect it, to review our image. So in the theme of the seminar today, we mentioned about the rethink. Yeah, I do agree with that kind of rethink of our strategy to approach and to review our image. And back to basic, we need to focus on the SWOT, the strength, weakness, the threat and opportunity for X enterprises when we back to the market. And when we are trying to review the image, so I think we can gain the commercial revenue or commercial benefits. And this is our important role to stay ahead and on the curve of maximizing the benefit for the company or the enterprises. So that's what my points to add in more for your questions.
When you say reconnect, do you mean that the brands have to reconnect to their stakeholders, or do you mean that the PR profession has to reconnect to others? Or
For
to
the reconnect, it can be like mentally and physically. For example, now at the beginning, Maxim also mentioned that maybe this is the last Zoom meeting. We prefer for offline meeting in early next year in March. For example, this kind of reconnect physically, but for reconnect mentally, it's kind that we keep the frequency, communicating frequencies of the masses to deliver our TA. So I think that's under the both way.
Okay, thank you. Alasdair, we had two very interesting opinions. What's yours?
So I think looking at, again, the research that we've done here, but also just intuitively picking up on this, I think there are sort of three main issues that people use when they judge the reputation of a company, consumers in Latin America, I mean to say. The number one is sustainability, but the second one is employment conditions and pay, and then also diversity in hiring. This is an incredibly diverse region, and it's not particularly well represented, frankly, amongst large corporate structures or in traditional communications campaigns. There was actually a piece of research that came out from Bourque yesterday talking more about advertising, actually, but talked about a 6% year-on-year increase in the representation of diverse groups in the 20 largest advertisers in Brazil. But this is something that still needs to change an awful lot. And I think, as I said, I mean, we know that companies or consumers are demanding that companies do this more. They actually get themselves involved in relevant societal issues. And one of the main issues beyond sustainability is education. And I think what companies need to understand, and where PR needs to improve, and where there's also an opportunity for us, is to realize if we are going to support companies actually do this with purpose, but actually follow through on it, we need to understand that we're often talking about the most vulnerable and traditionally excluded parts of society. And these groups don't traditionally fit into media plans or into the way people think about managing communication. It's very easy for an agency in São Paulo to think, okay, I know what an indigenous community in Amazonia is going to think, for example, but you don't. You need to actually do the research, and we need to be honest enough with ourselves to say we've not been good enough at this, and actually look to upskill, look to train, but also I think look to embrace sort of external disciplines. I mean, we work a lot with academics, for example, frankly, because I know that I'm not personally strong enough at this. We need to help our clients, but also ourselves, understand that, planning around specific audiences, that we can't underestimate the importance of this, and everything else needs to come from that. So that's where I believe there's an opportunity for us.
Okay, so you started to talk a little bit about the future and what we need to do to live up to the expectations. As Stuart said, we're not exactly there yet as a profession to be real partners of the companies when they're facing these challenges. So looking at different audiences, getting more information, more data, education of ourselves and probably our clients. What else? So the question again to all three of you is, what else does our profession have to do to really live up to these expectations, to move from media relations to strategic advisors that the companies actually take seriously? Alasdair, you can continue with that if you want, and then we'll give the word to Stuart.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, just training in general. Actually, Stuart, I saw a piece that you wrote the other day talking about the importance of investing in training, and I couldn't agree more. But I think there's a good reason why it's even more important now than ever. If we're expecting our consultants in our agencies or in our teams to be able to talk with sort of C-level people and convince them of major strategic decisions and changes in direction they need to make, we need to back them up and give them training that will help them do that. As you said, Stuart, you could be a great media relations person or put on great events, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got the soft skills that will allow you to do that. And I think this is even more important than ever, and I'm sure most people would agree. We've not been in our offices, and we're never going to go back to the way it was before. It's never going to be the same, everybody being in the office all the time together. And I myself, I learned so much at the beginning of my career just by listening to conversations that were happening around me, or phone calls on desks down the road, in terms of how to be more assertive or more consultative for my clients. I worry that, you know, people coming into the profession now who are, again, still at their kitchen tables for a lot of the time, they're not picking up some of those messages, or the, you know, just the experience that helps them do that. But also, I think, you know, it's not fair for us to expect them to. We need to actually invest in internal and external training that will help our teams to actually give this kind of advice. And just from a personal point of view, I mean, I think that for me is the most important sort of learning in terms of running our own agency that's come out of the pandemic, and something that we've just had to double down on.
Stuart?
Yeah, just basically reinforced all the things that Alasdair was just saying. I'll pick up first on one of the things he said in his previous piece about academics, because he only actually mentioned that very briefly. And I actually think it's so important, it's worth hammering home the point. So I'm a great believer in public relations learning from other disciplines. And there is so much kind of knowledge, expertise, research available in the academic world. I'm also always astounded that people don't embrace it more. I mean, I'm just reading the proof at the moment of a public relations book by Professor Anne Gregory that's being published later this year. And, you know, it's written in a really accessible form, which not everything academic is. But unless we're actually prepared to look at things like new models like that, but it's not just from PR academia, it's things from behavioral psychology, it's data and analytics. There are so many kind of new skills that we need to be looking for. So I think that's a really important point I just wanted to reinforce. But then also just picking up on what he said about kind of training and what we actually mean by that. I mean, a big part of my business is providing training to both in-house communications teams and to PR agencies. But one of the things I'm doing at the moment is we're actually shifting the focus and the emphasis of that. And what really resonated with me was the thing that Alasdair said about learning by sitting at your desk, because that's absolutely, I had some amazing mentors earlier in my career who taught me so much. And I say taught me so much, they didn't sit down and teach me. I just observed how they worked. I just kind of absorbed their knowledge and their approach to things and was able to build on it. So one of the things that we're working on at the moment is developing a whole series of new courses for the PR profession on things like the one I was working on this morning was managing upwards. You know, that's a really, really important skill. And often you'll see PR people going into a room and they actually have the right answer. They have the right advice. They know exactly what should be done, but they're incapable of convincing the C-suite, the CEO, that that's the route that should be taken. And the CEO will respond, yeah, but can't you just do a press release on it? And they'll trot off and do the press release on it instead of actually using their diplomatic skills to actually get the CEO to understand why the advice you were giving when you first went into the room was the correct advice. So I think there's lots and lots of opportunity for us to do these things. But it goes back to what I said about, you know, is the PR industry in a position to actually capitalize on the opportunities that we have? And I really don't think we are at the moment. We have people with technical skills, but we don't necessarily have those higher level skills. And even those technical skills, a lot of them are in short supply. So we really, really need to do something to address that. And my kind of final point is I was so frustrated when I read the CIPR State of the Profession report yesterday. And that might have been what Alasdair read, where I think it said 14% of people were investing in training as a way to tackle the skills shortage. Their solution was actually to poach off other people. How on earth can that be a healthy profession? You know, we need to be able to actually grow and develop our own talents. And do you know something? That actually, if you invest in that, that's a reason people will want to stay with you. You will make them more poachable because they'll be better, but they won't get that level of support and training if they go elsewhere. So actually investing in your people is a way of retaining them. And it's definitely a way of retaining clients or improving business performance if you're in-house.
Thank you. Marianne, before I give the floor to everybody else to ask questions to you, Do you have a view on that? In Asia, what is it that the PR profession needs to do? What are the skills that you guys need to work on to live up to the expectations of the companies?
Yeah, thanks for your question. So I do agree with Stuart and Alasdair for the characters very important. Like we need to take into account that the best practice was yesterday. So that's the reason for each PR elite or the communicator need to study, to keep learning and non-stop learning. So in my country or in my region, in Asia region, I think that one of the very important characteristic of the PR is about the learning. We also have the self-learning skill, also up how to say, we need to find the motivation for self-learning, sharing and caring, and from my, if we focus on the heart, we only can suffer, but if we focus on the lesson, so we can grow. So I mean, even the pandemic or the war or the crisis, financial crisis, or any bad situation, we can consider is a lesson for all of us. If we consider it's a lesson, so we can take experience and grow from that. So for my own perspective, I think one of the characteristics we need to prepare for any PR elite or communicator is either the expect the unexpected, because we are living in unpredictable world, uncertain world. At this moment, we cannot guarantee there is something similar to COVID pandemic will happen in future. Maybe it's more serious, more worse than what we have went through during two recent years. But what we can keep like the attitude, stay ahead with a positive mind and well prepared and always thinking positive to overcome any challenges or difficulty. So I think it will be important for us, and we can consider that it's a lesson to learn.
Thank you. What you just said brought to my mind the slogan that I live by nowadays. The slogan is that the basis of stability is flexibility for everyone, for companies, for PR companies. And while you guys are thinking of what questions to ask to our panelists, I would like to give you an example of, we talked about Ukraine. We started this conversation with Ukraine. So I thought I would tell you what I'm doing to help Ukraine right now, or Ukrainians right now. As you know, a lot of people fled Ukraine and came to Hungary, and a lot of Russians fled Russia and came to Hungary. And now we have companies where there's Ukrainians working and Hungarians working. You can tell they're probably not getting along very well because, you know, different nations, different attitude, different language, they don't even understand each other. And we have the same with the Russians coming here, Russians and Hungarians working together, there's issues. So what I'm doing right now, and this is something you could probably do in your own countries if you face the same problem. I got two celebrities, Hungarian and Ukrainian celebrities. And I'm doing team building training for Hungarians and Ukrainians, and for Hungarians and Russians. The Ukrainian-Russian team building, that's not going to happen, at least for a few years. But what we're trying to do is get out of the box, move away from media relations, try to understand what the companies are looking for right now. They're looking for productivity. They want their teams to work together. The Ukrainians and the Hungarians will not work together because they don't know each other, they don't understand each other. So PR comes in to support them in that and do trainings where they learn how to work together even though they don't speak the same language. So that's just an example of what I think public relations can do to help in this situation. And now the floor is yours. Do you have any questions or any comments to what we were talking about? We still have a few minutes before we have to move on. Okay, I have one here. I'm reading it to you. Okay, it's from Jan. Equality and inclusion in other aspects can be both enhanced and setbacks as the recovery hopefully picks up. How do the panelists see PR and our industry's role and responsibilities regarding these challenges? Panelists, who wants to answer that?
Thank you very much, Geoffrey. Thank you.
May I
Really
go
appreciate
first?
it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for your question. So may I go first? From that kind of recent sample, what we can see the PR and our industry roles in and responsibility regarding to this challenge. Within this challenge, we think that our role in PR and communication will bring people close to people by caring during the unsafe condition under the work condition. So if we can do our great communication role, so we can keep people close to people, and it's showing that we caring about each other. And because when we are doing communicating, it means that like we try to get people to be unified. We don't feel like alone, or we don't feel remotely, even during the pandemic, what we experienced in past 2 years. Even we cannot going out, we cannot come and meet in person, but even on Zoom, on the other online platform, we still like, we can talk, we can connect even online. So that's one of the things, we keep people connected. The second thing, we caring about the community. During the worst time, we not only take care of ourselves, our family members only, we care about others, the surrounding in our community via the CSR or ESG campaigns or activity. So we think we caring about the community. So I think from my point of view, this as a to see later. We need to show up our responsibility and our role for the people. Another thing is, I mean, in terms of the content, in terms of the our PR work, we need to be more creative than ever, because under the pandemic, under the hard time, we have a very limited resources. So with the limited resources, our PR people need to be more creative with what we can be able to do, make it doable and workable, even under the limited and well-prepared condition. So that's what I think our daily work, our PR work, media relationships still keep on the right track with those kind of things. 3 C's, the caring, the community, and we need to be creative more than ever.
Thank you.
That's all from my side. Yep.
Thank you. Maxime, do you want to take over? Maxime, do you want to take over?
Yes, thank you very much, Geoffrey. Köszönöm szépen, barátom. So really very insightful discussion, and thank you very much for the 3 participants. The next moderator will be our great friend from beautiful Denmark, Jan Boman, who I met at a nice dinner just 2-3 weeks ago. And also I would like to hand over to Stuart Bruce, our executive committee member, who will manage the summit from now on until the end. And Jan, you have the floor to introduce your great speakers. And I see here Marie Alexander from Singapore also, and Jan will introduce the rest. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Maxime. Thank you, everyone. Hello and welcome to everyone from this panel, which spans time zones starting in Singapore, reaching Copenhagen and Spain. I'm not quite sure whether it's Madrid or Malaga, but we may know. And finally in Quebec. And Rosanne, is that Quebec City you're in right now? It is. I'd love to go back there. I think it's not 2 weeks since I was there, more like 10 years or something like that. The question put to our three panelists are, what are the social media platforms of the future? Most of us, having experienced a past with absolutely no social media, apart from actually meeting people in the street, we now live in a present where almost everything appears to happen on or be ruled by social media. If it wasn't on social media, it didn't happen. Now, the more serious aspect of this is that our social media today are very few and they're very dominant. There are some variations according to geography, demographics, national or regional hegemony, political rules, or simply by the limitations set by less internet covered areas. But overall, they're few and strong. And especially in the aspects of which we're discussing today, in times of pandemics, in times of war, this becomes even more crucial to what's going to happen. And we don't have to be cynics. We can just remain realists. This war is not the last war. And even if we were all shocked on February 24th, the war didn't start on February 24th. It started in 2014. To my Georgian friends, the war started in 2008 and is ongoing. The people of Syria are still in vain, and so are the people of Yemen. And we also have the small thing of a climate crisis coming up. So let's not be unrealistic. This war is not the last war. And that makes, with a dominance, the question of what will the social media of the future be even more serious. One option is that the direct and indirect powers of the strongs will grow stronger. Another option is that they will lessen importance as new opportunities, new ways of communicating, new technologies, and quite frankly, new choices of people take place. I love to think of this. However, I never get to think it through thoroughly. But luckily, someone who is more able than I am has done that. With me are the three panelists is Maria Alexander from Singapore. She's from the Alexander Group, one of the world's best digital marketing and PR agencies. They launched 150 PR campaigns and has 25,000 followers on Instagram. Next is Eva Snijders, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from Spain. Eva is the co-founder of the consultancy firm Genetikomm and is mostly known for her expertise in storytelling. Rosanne Bourque from Quebec is a digital strategist currently working as a senior consultant at National, which according to sources is the most important PR firm in Canada. Returning to myself, my playing fields are Greenland and the Nordics, and my work focuses on advocacy and building community relations. And quite frankly, I don't even think I have 25 followers on Instagram. Now let's get down to it, and starting with Rosanne, what do you think are the social media platforms of the future? We've agreed about start of 3 to 4 minutes. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Jan, for the introduction. So yes, I've ran into that question with my team at National, because really I was trying to be futuristic and think about like what will be the next social media platforms. But what we realized is that we probably don't know yet what these platforms will be, because technology is evolving so fast. I don't think we can yet imagine what it will look like in the future, maybe in 1 year or two, but in 5 years or 10 years from now, we'll have a pretty different landscape regarding social media platforms. So I cannot really foresee any precise new platform. However, I think the most important thing will be like to observe a shift, if I can say it like that, that has already started regarding social media platforms. There is the platform Be Real that has started to grow in popularity, which is you have 2 minutes to take a picture of what you're doing right now and share it with your friends. So it sounds pretty stressful, but it's actually fun because I've tried it. And you have to really show what you're doing right now and what you look like right now. So there's no filters, and it can be quite funny, to be honest, but I think there's going to be more and more platforms and habits like that on social media in the future. We know people are eager to have more authentic communications on social media. We're getting tired of filters, of fake content. So I think that's more in the way we're going to share content, and maybe more regarding the type of content we're going to share than really changing platforms. And then I think it's going to change in that way, because we're really starting to see the downsides of having all of our social media controlled by the GAFAMs. Some companies have already started to decentralize their communications and social media. So they're starting to build chat and forums and other integrated platform on their website. So I think that's going to be another maybe trend we're going to observe in the next year or month. And a lot of content that is also going to move on Discord, Twitch, and the metaverse that we cannot ignore these days. So a lot of streaming and video content, I guess. Metaverse is only the beginning of what we can do. But if I can be a little bit, how can I say that in English? But if I can sound ring the alarm a little bit, the metaverse is also really polluting in terms of energy consumption. So I think we have to be a little bit careful about our habits and how we use social media platform, because we're going to hit a wall regarding our planet and environment. So that would be my answer.
Thank you, Rosanne. I think we got several points for later discussion. And now to Eva, what are your thoughts on these on this question?
Thank you, Jan. And it's actually Malaga where I'm residing today. So just for clarification. After we had a brief email discussion on the topic, I wholeheartedly agree with Rosanne that we can't really tell what the platforms will be in 5 years. We could foresee probably the next year, but I find it hard to imagine how this will evolve in the intermediate future. I was thinking, after rereading our emails, about something that might be an interesting topic too. So social media will definitely grow and it will evolve. For one reason is that people are obviously social and we need to connect with other people. We need to have these interactions, but also because technology and all the money that is behind it, the business goals that are behind social media, will push for it to grow. So having said that, there's a few things I like to mention when I talk about stories that are obviously part of who we are as human beings, is that yes, we do need stories, but we also need to sleep. We do need food, but we also need time to digest. In order to be creative, we need to be able to be bored. It is actually proven scientifically that in order to make new neurological connections, we need to look at the clouds and just do nothing for a while, which is why good ideas come to us when we're showering and not while we're at our desk waiting for them, struggling for them to show up. So one of the things I'm seeing is, so there's this growth, but there's also a tendency for people to switch off social media. All the mental health apps, the ones that promote mindfulness and mental health, encourage us to switch off and not be hyper connected all day long. And then there's this other force. So we are trying to remain sane. And I think the pandemic has shown that. There's very interesting reports on mental health during the pandemic. What we could only connect through screens and could not hug our loved ones or sit with them at the fire, not be near. we were in a way we were sense deprived, which you may know, sense deprivation is a form of torture, and it does have an effect on our well-being. So I would like to see where this goes. I would like to see how these two forces, our human needs on one hand and business needs globally, how they can meet and what they can do to us. Because apart from metaverse, we've spoken a lot about, there's all these technological innovations like VR and artificial intelligence and AR, that make it possible to be even more invasive. So social media is no longer something you have on your computer screen or even on your mobile phone. It is something that can, jump at you while you're just going for a stroll. So I'm very curious to see where this will all lead us and how we will remain sane in this evolution.
That was, again, some points to discuss later. Finally, Marie, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Jen, for moderating this. Very nice to talk to you today. You look really adorable with your glasses. Yes, and Maxim, thank you so much for inviting me. I really do care about you, boss, and you're great, and you're looking great in your red suit. Jessica, I miss you, and thank you so much for inviting me. Now, we like to talk about social media today, and this is one of my biggest strengths in the company. We are very diverse in social media. I don't know why I have a gift of predicting trends. I've been in industry for too long, since Friendster started. And after Friendster was Facebook. Facebook was trending for 5 to 10 years. And now there's Facebook right now. I know that Eva and Rosanne, I totally respect your point of view. We obviously cannot predict whatever trends that is coming up. But I foresee, because there are so many apps and so much social media. There is obviously Facebook, Instagram, that we are both addicted on it. Number one, mental health is obviously the first thing on my mind when I put out social media posts. I do not bombard posts at all, if you notice by social media. My 25,000 Instagram followers have been built for a very, very long time. I do not know why I am on social media, and suddenly the burst of social media helped my career like crazy, because maybe I'm a bit different from everybody else. Since young, I was very kind. So I was a prefect and a monitress. I really, really helped people all the way since I grew up. And I have everybody in mind in the social media community. So when I do something, I post about something, it doesn't matter about globally or whatsoever. But in the years to come, Instagram is an app that is a picture and a testimonial and an affirmation, and is a form of sort of flex. And it's also a part of way to communicate. So I think Instagram is going to be a very long time, until from now to maybe 5 years time. Facebook is also going to trend, but it's slowly battling with the TikTok. TikTok is the younger generation right now coming in, which I have no, I don't know, I'm not on TikTok because I'm not that young, but the younger generation loves to use TikTok to benchmark against Instagram and Facebook. Then in the end, Instagram have to take on the tools of TikTok to go into Instagram. So in a way, you could say, in a business professional world, we use all. So we use LinkedIn, we use Instagram, we use Facebook, we use Twitter. And then now you see the world's biggest billionaire, which is Elon Musk, buying Twitter like crazy, because all the business professionals are there. So to make a business so authentic and stand out on social media, because the social media links to website, any business knows that once you look at your website, you look at your Instagram, you look at your Facebook, it's all connected in one, because it's just like, hey, are you on Facebook? Add me as a friend, So in the industry of businesses for PR professionals, somehow or other, I went into Instagram and Facebook, just got bombarded. Every other week and month, my Instagram is flooded with different people viewing me from Singapore, America, India, Australia, Vietnam, Hong Kong, and Europe, Paris, Indonesia, so many I cannot even explain. Like this month, I'm trending into nowhere. And because I've been hashtagging so much all the way back until down all my posts. I have 650 posts. But every post I put up, there's always a meaning behind it. So what my question is today for social media platforms of the future is to be authentic. When you see a brand that we work with, or any brand that you work with, or regardless B2C or B2B, it comes down to a point where, does this work for them? So if it's a younger generation brand, you go to the obviously TikTok and Instagram. If it's the older generation brand, you go to the Instagram and Facebook. But you have to capture your audience every time you put out a post. So if you notice, I haven't been posting anything since 1.5 months because I'm overly bombarded with massive emails until I cannot reply. And I make special time just to see all of you today because I extremely care about you, and I'm very thankful that Maxime invited me for this panel. So I feel towards the future upcoming, I think the war has made everybody really, really scared and to talk about it. To be honest with you, I'm receiving emails from people like Ukraine, Russia, big Russian firms that we cannot even work with them. We can't even and we're having sanctions from Russia. But you see, Russia alone, right? The boss of Russia said that, right? And he did their own thing, but it's not the civilians who did it. So my point of view, looking at this objectively, we have to move forward as a world to protect each other. No matter how much businesses are going to suffer, or if you can change the identity of a business to become international, even though they are Russian, it's still okay, So it really depends on the mindset of the CEO, and it depends on the person working for the brand. And if you talk about social media platforms of the future, I think that the people are one voice in a community, because I'm so blessed that when I added Maxime and Jessica on my Facebook, I have 4,000 friends. They are all impressed, mostly impressed. They're celebrities, A-list celebrities, there's press all over the world, there's market from different industries. I've been out doing PR for a very, very long time, so I add everybody just know. When I put out one post on my Facebook, like this week, because Singapore is so busy, I've been working 3 years non-stop, my dears. I'm so busy. I want to take a break, but I cannot. So as you know, the healthcare industry, when we had the COVID period, I focused on healthcare and food. When COVID finished, now we do everything back. We had fashion, beauty, jewelry, and all the other different industries, B2C. But during COVID period, it was so insane because we had to communicate key messages on social media. So social media is very effective when it comes to crisis. Like example, now in Singapore, our chickens are all gone and Malaysia has cut the ban. So my client who's importing fresh chickens from Malaysia, has cut it, and then now he's importing from Thailand. He got the bid, and all of the market share he's taking down right now. So I was like, oh my God, this is the opportunity for me to launch my Instagram post. I think Jessica and Maxime saw it. It was really crazy. I just did a post with my friend, actually my best friend, she's a top celebrity in Singapore. We ran to the supermarket and we grabbed the chicken. And the next day, so many reports just came out. So social media is a connective feeling to all your friends and family. Once you know it, they put it out. You don't even need to do a report. They just come to you straight away. Yeah. So I think because my dad used to be in 25 years in the business of press, he worked very hard for his work. And I did too. I worked nonstop. As you know, producing 150 PR campaigns and reaching millions of views is really madness. Yeah, so I feel that social media is the future, but of course, Eva and Rosanne said a very, very important thing. Mental health awareness is very, very important when you're not addicted to it. Yeah, I don't even watch Netflix, and I'm immune to any. I don't know. Yeah, I always read a lot of investment books. Yeah, so what they say is correct. Mental health awareness is very important. Yeah, so long as you know this, one day you just take 1 hour, 2 hours, more than enough, or maybe 20 to 30 minutes is more than enough. Yeah, But so long as you put out social media posts and you capture your audience, you're good to go. Yeah, thank you for your message and ask.
Thank you, Marie. I'd just like to ask anyone just a short quiz. Which was the first social media to reach 1 million followers? Anyone knows? Put up their hand.
1 million followers, as in what sense?
As in people connected to, like, as on Facebook, as on TikTok, as on something.
Oh, are you talking about which media platform to reach the fastest?
When does this first happen, or actually what platform? I can tell you, I didn't know yesterday, but I looked to the mother of all wisdom, the internet, and found out it was MySpace with 1 million. I think it was 1977 or something. Well, MySpace is not the leading one today. I think we could say safely. So what we're talking about here is really not what will be the social platforms of the future, but how will the social media platforms of the future be? I'd like to get back to you, Rosanne, and assuming that here in this in our small space we can decide everything. Let me ask you, how should they be in the future?
That's an interesting question, because I think we have very different perspective around the world. So that's a first, I would say, difficulty in answering that question, because an answer from me in Canada maybe not the same for global case, in fact. But I would say we have to really care about the impact of digital on the environment, because I think we're not enough aware of those issues. There's a really big impact on using all that data and all the social media platforms and changing our cell phones every 2 years. So I think we have to be more aware of that, and we have to work as digital professionals in educating our respective country about that. So that's the first thing. I think in the next years we'll be more educated about maybe how to reduce our connection time, how to reduce the weight of different files like pictures, videos, even coding in different languages for website. Some of them are less they use less data. So I think that's the first thing. We'll have to be more educated about that. But then on the platform perspective, I think, as we said, it is going to be more authentic. The content is going to be maybe more spontaneous. I know we've observed a lot of trends like photo dump on Instagram instead of working on the same pictures for hours before posting them. We tend to post more carousel with many photos that were taken, for example, during the weekend, and it's just like no filter pictures, and it's telling a story, I think. So what leads me to my next point is that we love video content, we love stories, we love storytelling. So I guess that's going to be an important aspect of our future social media platform. And I think it's going to be maybe not only Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I think they're still going to be present, but maybe some people will have ideas to create other platforms that are going to be a little bit more ethical, talking about data and environmentally as well. So that would be my answer.
Thank you, Eva. You doing storytelling too? Could you comment on that? Or propose your own ideas, please.
So yeah, I was listening to Rosanne right now, and it's interesting what you say. And again, I see the dichotomy. Maybe that's me. Maybe I just like to see dichotomies everywhere. Yes, there's a tendency towards this spontaneous content, unfiltered, ephemeral, even the things that will only last for like 24 hours. But on the other hand, I remember when movie theaters were struggling, and some people said, well, we don't have time to sit in a movie theater for an hour and a half. This is obviously before Netflix became a thing. And we started watching entire series, like 4 seasons in a row. So we did have time to consume stories, to enjoy stories. We did have time for that. We even had a lot more time. So I think, yes, these spontaneous pieces will emerge. And I really like, I'm going to check the Be Real app that Rosanne was talking about. I think that's a very interesting thing to happen. But I also think that we'll have long form. So we'll have content that we can actually follow for a longer time, say projects that are evolving where we can meet the people behind it that are more complex and longer. Same thing happened in journalism a few years ago. People said people don't have the time to read a full-length article. And then comes the New York Times and they published this story about a snowstorm that was, I think, 47,000 words. And it was their most read article that year. So we tend to think that is what, to me, what social media is doing. It sort of keeps us in the moment and what is happening now, what is trending now. But we also crave the other part. We need to be able to follow things for a longer time for them to make sense. And I do think there will, maybe from the art world, maybe from a more underground world, but there will be streams that are longer and more complex. I do think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marie, do you see streams being longer? Would you sit down to read that 37,000 word article on snowstorms?
I don't really get the question. Can you maybe explain in more detail?
Do you see content? You advocated for being more. There would be more and more and more social media in the future. Do you think the contents will be longer, or will it all be speed?
Okay, so I think because people are fascinated of objectifying themselves sometimes, and that's personal, they will surely post more. But for businesses, they will post things that are important. If the person is a very smart PR professional, social media professional, and objectively focus on their assets. So it's very subjective, your question. So for example, if it's like, hey, I want to flex, yeah? Okay, I'll post a lot of things, you know? Girls love to post bags, handbags and stuff like that and whatever. Boys post like watches and luxury cars, whatever. So it really depends on the person. But if you're talking about the future, I think the younger generation has a lot of things to say. Older generation like us, I think we are more reserved and we're very, very cool. People like me, like a grandfather who tries very hard to be on social media, it really depends on the person. Like for me, I only post when there's a need to post. When there's an intention, you post. But when you're in a subject of trending, like for example, right now, like in Singapore, we are talking about no chickens, and then suddenly chicken from Thailand, everybody talks about chickens, all like wow, and then the people take picture of a chicken rice. Oh, okay, you know, I took it for granted, but now actually this is precious. Yeah, so it really depends. But we are not only a Singaporean company, I'm a global agency, so we launch everything in everywhere. Like last week, I just did something in New York and LA, and we did a press launch or so. So subjectively, if you talk about social media and what is going to trend in content, it really depends on the person. If the person is very secure, the person will post once in 2 weeks or once a week. If the person is extremely insecure and loves a lot of attention and wants it so hard, every day, bombard like crazy. And then you'll be like, what is this person up to? But they just want to take the grass, but you cannot grasp it because you see, like for example, right, like my other friends, right, like Eva and Rosanne, I'm very sure we all post social media. Next day, Oh, I'm in the toilet, I'm watching your social media post. Okay, I just woke up. Then suddenly you post one more time. Oh my God, I'm taking a shower, and you just post again. No, we don't do that, right? So you have to strategically place your posts. If a smart person knows how to do it, they'll do it right. If a slow person don't know how to do it, they do it every other day, which is extremely wrong because you do not know how to capture your audience. Like people like me, I post one time, 2 months, you still talk about me. So it really depends on the individual because I feel very shy, I'm reserved, I'm Pisces by nature, I don't even speak. When Maxim and Jessica asked me to come on board to speak about this, I don't mind. But usually it's very hard for me to get to speak in any panel. I normally do not go out at all and speak on like the conferences or whatever. I only speak on very business events that are very exclusive, selective events. So yeah, that's your question to answer.
I think you're very right on that one. In the end, it comes down to the person. And in the other hand, we have the business. And it's very funny, the storyteller telling about how business and money rules. So that's it. I had prepared a question for the three of you to end, but you have.
In fact, Jan, sorry to interrupt. I just want to maybe share something I just thought about regarding that question. Sorry again for interrupting, but I was thinking a lot about mood and mindfulness, and also what Mahi said about like some people posting their chicken and rice, and the question of the spontaneous content. Sorry, the word is not exactly the same in French. So
sponsored content, you mean?
Yeah, no, spontaneous. Sorry.
Spontaneous, yeah, spontaneous.
Yes, thank you. Okay, good. So,
no problem.
and I was thinking a lot about a discussion I had with someone working at Spotify that was really full of insights for me, because they have a lot of data, as you know, on consumers' habit around music and stuff like that. And the girl working at Spotify told me that when there was a solar eclipse, there was this song, Total Eclipse of the Heart, that was playing in different countries as the eclipse was evolving. I don't know if I'm being clear, but you could see like the shift in the popularity of the song following the eclipse. And there's also a lot of data around like the moods of people. For example, I'm pretty sure when the war started, people were listening to more slow music or relaxing music or slower beats. And from what I've heard you said, Eva and Mary, I think we're maybe going to move to some platforms that are going to be a little bit more aligned with people's mood. So maybe Instagram or other platforms will launch new functionalities to follow our moods, or like how do you feel? Maybe in the morning you'll have you'll have the choice to pick like a different type of contents according to your mood. And I'm just brainstorming, but maybe it's going to be one of the trends in the future.
This sounds like the question is, will people align to social media, or will social media align to people? And that's a very interesting question, and we don't know yet. Now we're into the Q&A. Looking at the chat function, this has turned into a fan club for Stuart, and I understand that. I haven't seen real questions here, but if someone would like to pose to the three panelists, do so. And while you're typing away, let me just share one social media experience from me, because I never, ever usually share my personal experiences on social media. I share other things that I find interesting or especially funny. Last week I did. I'm about 50 years, and this was the first time I have been physically attacked by a seagull. I didn't even get a picture of it, but I simply had to share that. I felt so insulted.
You're so funny.
Luckily, I can tell you that the seagull did not succeed in its endeavor which was to run away with my croque-monsieur, even if it tried very, very, very hard. So, so seagulls and social media meet from time to time. Does anyone, now you're going down to cat lovers there and TikTok, does anyone have questions about the future of social media for the three panelists? Now is your hour. It doesn't seem as, then I will ask, and this is an open question, you don't have to answer, if the three panelists, if each of you, one of you or all of you, two of you, does have some kind of concluding remark in this. And I will start by asking in the south of Spain, where I believe Malaga is. Eva, do you have any conclusion remarks to this question, to this subject?
Well, I would like to clarify that I'm not an enemy of social media. And like Maria-Alexandra said, it has helped my career a great deal. And I'm very lucky to know you all, or most of you, and be connected to you thanks to social media. I mean, I would not know what Stuart is up to if it weren't for Facebook and LinkedIn. I just meant to, you know, find a counterpoint, see if the discussion would be more interesting. I think we can all agree that we can only see into the future for like a few months, a year, 2 years maybe, where Maria-Alexandra, you're more into social media, so maybe you have a further vision. I do think that we will align to social media, and social media will align to us regarding to your last question. It will shape us because it has shaped us until so far. But we will also demand things like what Rosanne just suggested about, I want social media to follow my mood. I think that would be awesome. I think you should, you know, work on that idea. It would be great. So they will also adapt to us, even if just for business reasons, because they still want to sell us, right? So thank you.
So I have a question. I missed this part, so if it's possible, I will ask. It's all about the number of platforms you use in your everyday professional life. So how many of them they have chats or messengers, and in how many chats you are involved to communicate with various clients? It's like like a question about the mental health of PR professionals. So I'm waiting for your answers.
I would like to say, because I already said I wouldn't answer that question, but I will, because I work with quite a few tech companies who, for security reasons or just because they can, have their own platforms. So I have all the platforms we're all on. I even have TikTok, and then I have like a platform and a chat for each of these clients. So it's quite a lot. I can count them if you want to and tell you.
I think a lot will do. How about thinking Marie, what do you have, a lot or more than a lot?
Okay, guys, I need to tell you all this. I always post things, but I'm too busy, right, to read anybody's post. So I wait for all of you, your friends. My friends are like that. I have a lot of friends. When I meet them, oh, Marie, you know that the news is now? I'm like, oh, okay, thank you very much for telling me. But I don't know, because I don't want to know. And I'm so tired of putting out posts, because I am the person who put out the post together with my social media team and telling them what to do and planning ahead, until I don't even want to look at social media. That's how busy I am. I have so many emails to read. I think I'm one of the most craziest professionals in the world. I have, right now in my 3 email box, I have 77,000 emails I haven't read yet. And right now in Telegram, I have 1,000 people send me messages and I ignore only quite a few and blah, blah, blah. I haven't even replied. In my email today, I have about 100, but plus minus, people have invited me more than enough chat groups in Facebook. So to answer your question, it depends on the brand, which social media works for them. But we usually use all. Yeah, and because some people, like, for example, older generation are in the long-term ones, like the LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. The younger generation are in everything. But I don't want to be in, I seem like as if I'm on it, but I really am not. I only once in a while see only, yeah, we are all looking in, but I'm exhausted of looking at everybody else. Because I am a trendsetter. So whatever I wear, however I speak, however I explain, people also listen and understand because I built my reputation for so long, since young. Without social media, I don't know how to explain it. It's just like, in school, because everybody trusts you and then you get popular and then people bombard your handphone and your pager and then people spread rumors about you and like you're great and you're professional and so on, you're trustworthy. So to answer your question, Tatif, is like, Tatif, right? I'm explaining your name right. You need, inside your heart, if you can be a great professional and you're positive and you're amazing and you help loved ones since young until now, you build an excellent reputation, right? And then when you go on more in your life, everybody will just talk about you nonstop. I don't know, it's like healing, you're kind and a positive aura. And then, yeah, that's how I'm going to answer your question. Yeah.
Thank you. Rosanne, you have been kind enough to give your answer in writing, but I want to give you the final word. So of the many social platforms that you have used, which one would you like to ditch the most?
To ditch, as to like forget about it.
As to get away from it, as to not using it, but you have to. Which is the one you least favor?
I guess a lot of my friends are still living in 2000 on Snapchat, and I've already ditched that one. But I don't know. It's hard to pick. I would say maybe Facebook. I use a lot Messenger, but Facebook not a lot anymore. For brands, it's not the same answer.
Thank you, everyone in this panel. Thank you for everyone listening too. Now you know my terrible story of the seagull. Please don't share it with anyone else. Thank you, really, thank you so much. I think you all have the contact information of the three panelists and make contact if you want to do so. And now it's 5:00 p.m. Stuart, back to you.
Thank you, Jan. That is perfect timing. We have, so congratulations on keeping everybody to a perfect schedule. I think that was a fascinating discussion. I'm a TikTok fan. I can kind of lose hours in there. But for work stuff as well, it's not just all fun nowadays. You can look at accounts, things like the World Economic Forum has an account, World Health Organization. There's lots of kind of serious stuff on there. So if you haven't had a play with TikTok, I would really recommend having a look. I haven't been as adventurous as Maxim yet, so I've only created 1 or 2 TikTok videos myself, but more are on the way. But I shared Maxim's link earlier, so if you don't already have the TikTok app, I'd recommend download it and at least follow Maxim and see what he's up to. He does some great kind of fun stuff. So now we want to kind of move on to the next panel session, and I'm going to hand over to my good friend Sarub from India. So you can see we're spanning the globe today. And he's going to introduce a session on new media and PR. So over to you, over to India.
Hi, Stuart. Thank you. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are watching this from. And I've been obviously listening to some very fascinating conversations this evening. And talking about social media platforms of the future, I could get 3 very interesting ideas. I don't know what those platforms may look like, but they may sound like a seagull, a cat, or a chicken. So we've had quite a few animalistic discussions already. And yeah, I think nobody's used that to call their platform. So maybe something for the social media platforms of the future. Great, awesome. So moving on further in this wonderful forum that WCFA has put out, I have a very interesting topic to introduce, and followed by some really fascinating speakers. We were originally 5, but 2 had to drop out due to certain contingencies, but we still have 3, and all 3 are really, really amazing. So the topic really is new media and PR trends, and what new media, of course, could sound like a superset of social media, but it's something that most of us anyway use, but we also take it for granted to some extent. The challenge, of course, is we don't know when and where old media stopped and new media began. So you ask somebody in 1990, so they would still have a definition of old and new media. You ask them in 1980, go further backwards. If you want to go to the front, maybe in year 2000. So anybody before 2000 would say this is old. After 2000 might appear like new. So it's really a relative term for many people, but it's also something which is important for everybody to relate to, especially in this forum and the extended audience we have in the PR community. It's something which defines our profession and is also providing certain direction and guidance. So while this becomes important, what I would actually want to do straight away without taking away time from our amazing speakers is to really introduce them. So I'll start with Thabisile Phumo from South Africa. She's the Senior Vice President and Head of Stakeholder Relations at Sibanye-Stillwater. She's also a WCFA Executive Committee member. I'll then like to introduce Vlad Bazikalov. He's a Sales Director of Emerging Markets at Cision. And then we've got Aaron Kwittken from US. He's the founder and CEO of Profit with a PR in Capital. And he's also been the founder and chairman of KWT Global. He's a WCF Executive Committee member. And all of them are coming from a very, very interesting set of backgrounds from the traditional sort of industries to new age AI-enabled tools to creating softwares and platforms for the PR sector. So we do believe that they have all the necessary skill sets, capabilities, and the competencies to answer all your questions, plus the one that I'm going to put out for them to start with. So my first question really to all the three panelists, and they will have about a minute or two to respond to that, is actually a quick fire round question. So, and which is, how would you really define new media, and what does it really include or exclude according to you? So it's really going to start from that, and I'm going to invite Thabi first. Would you like to go first?
Good afternoon, good day to everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to engage with you today. I think for me, a simple definition is really communication delivered through digital technology. And I believe for this industry, it really has been a welcome disruptor in a sense that it obviously poses opportunities for innovation, but it also comes with a complexity in that it is diverse. New apps, new applications and channels are cropping up on a daily basis. And for me, if you separate I'll call it the old school new media, your old TV channels and all of that, those I would almost put in that category. And here I'm talking more web-based virtual digital platforms that are driving communication going forward. And what they bring the new media into the PR space is obviously issues of immediacy of communication, which I think is a positive, but also the issue of democratization of information, which is quite critical when we talk to issues of ethics, when we talk to issues of access to information, and maybe later we can explore the issues of the challenges that are brought about by this immediacy and access, in that facts are fluid. And as PR professionals, we need to be able to get into a space where we are able to help our audiences decipher what is fake, decipher what is facts, but do it in such a way that we are quick, we are nimble, we are flexible and adaptable to the trends that are brought about by this new media in the space that we are operating in. Thank you.
That's very incisive and some very interesting points. You could actually build a thesis around them. They're so important. Thank you for that. Moving on to Vlad, would you like to take on this question? So how would you describe new media, and what do you think is really included or excluded in it, according to you?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Sarab. It's a pleasure to be a part of this great event and the panel. So coming back to the topic, I will try to simplify, and I found a very simple definition. So the technology, and let's say the old or traditional media can be defined as a media which has existed for many, many decades, and then non-internet, non-digital media. And they've been used for advertising and PR for many, many years. And certain industry successfully used this media to deliver their messages to their target audiences. And the new media is a digital and internet-based platforms and applications which have developed in the past 10 to 15 years. That's why it has a definition as a new comparing to the traditional media. And the main difference, I would say, is that new digital media gives us ability and to the audience to interact and not just read, but to interact, to engage with influences and the audiences. And what includes in traditional media is a broadcast, as we know, satellite, print, and all these media which we used to use many, many years before. So that's a simple definition from me. And I think there'll be a very interesting topic to identify what would be or how would we call, for example, Financial Times newspaper, whether it's old or new media, and then a digital version of Financial Times. But that, I think, a different topic to discuss.
Thanks, Vlad. I think you created an interesting context over there. For you, it's a very clear distinction between traditional and new. And I'll move on to Aaron to add his inputs.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, everybody. Good to see everybody. It's a good afternoon to you all. Good morning to myself. So, full disclaimer: I tend to say somewhat provocative and controversial things. And I say that to get everybody's attention, but here's how I view all this. So I think every answer is yes, and I agree with the last two panelists. I view the world in new media. There are things like Substacks and Reddits and Ask Me Anything, and newsletters are getting a lot of prominence and a lot of momentum in the media right now. I think also that freelancers, oddly, are the new media because media organizations, especially in the States and in North America, are contracting. They're not expanding except for a very few. But really how I view new media is in the tool set. And this is also a shout out to Vlad and Cision. I went from actor to director. So I've been in this business for 30 years. I love this trade. I gave up my day job at my agency to become chairman of my agency to then build a platform. And I do believe that the future is going to rest more so in marrying both the art and science of public relations. The problem is there hasn't been a lot of science in PR. It's been very relationship based. Relationships are eroding. There's more misinformation. There's more disinformation. There's deep fakes. We're trying to sort who are the high authority sources that really want to cover our narratives. And our business for years now has been built on instinct and experience. We don't have data. We're not performative in the same way that our marketing siblings are. So I believe new media from a tool set standpoint is how do we make PR people more performative, not just to look at how did I do, but how do I do better? And I'm happy to elaborate on that in another answer later on.
Thanks, Aaron. A couple of very interesting sort of points, largely around, I think, the idea around instinct versus data-centric, abilities of our professionals and our systems and our tool sets. And of course, you spoke about a couple of interesting new medias like Substack. I'm just going to carry on this discussion a little bit further, and then I'm going to come back on a tough last challenging question, which I didn't prepare my co-panelists for. But coming back to Thabi, I have a question for you. You obviously got some very, very rich experience, over the last couple of years, and more recently in your profession, you are in a very interesting industry, and you can talk about it. But what I wanted to ask you was that how different is crisis management in the age of new media? And is there some sort of a new playbook that one needs to take care of, to really get this right?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think I would say there's a new playbook definitely, but the basics and the fundamentals stay the same. And I think that is where the science of PR comes in a sense that ultimately your crisis communication approach needs to be strategy driven. And this new media offers you an opportunity to begin to go to look for niched communication where it's the right tool for your right audiences, because what we tend to find is when people are in a crisis, they kind of spray everything and hope to God that some of the tools may catch. So it offers you an opportunity in the new playbook for you to be highly niched, but also the flexibility because of the dynamism of the conversations, but the dynamism of the technology as well. And I think what is critical with the new playbook is to bring human back into the communication. I mean, what new media offers us is interactivity, which means during a crisis, in as much as the control has moved away from the company or the organization where you could write a press release, you're the main source of information, you can decide when information is received and in what format that information is received. New media has kind of debunked all of that. And the value that it then brings is the lifespan of your crisis can be shortened simply because of the attention span of your audiences. So with all these opportunities, I think there's an opportunity for PR professionals to understand how to play in a context that provides for immediate information, how to play, back to my earlier point, in a context where everybody is a communicator, but how you niche yourself to become more smarter, more nimble, and make sure that your messages are pointed and appropriate, but most importantly, interesting for your audiences to sift through the multiplicity of messages that are just raining down in all these platforms. Because unlike your traditional media, which was timed, it had intervals, these new media don't have intervals, and therefore you need to even be agile enough to be able to help your audiences find what is suitable and find a space for your brand to be able to drive its crisis without getting lost in the clutter of the many conversations that are happening within the space of the new media. So I think that is the new playbook. It's same old, but what it just then requires is adaptability. And when I say same old, I'm talking to strategy, because I think a lot of us as PR professionals, we kind of lost it when we went and thought the technology drives the strategy. Yes, technology is advanced, but the strategy should always drive the technology. And really, that's where I think I can offer insights in terms of where the direction is going in terms of crisis management. It's no longer an organizational crisis. It belongs to everyone. And for the organization to be able to pull itself out and manage it, it needs to be able to understand how to play in this space as well. And so can I call it new media literacy is required for PR professionals that are driving crisis.
I really like this last term that you shared, new media literacy. I think it's sort of assumed that all of us already know it, but it may be far from the truth. I think there is a lot of merit in probably creating content around this topic. You also spoke about strategy driving technology and not the other way around. And that I think is another fascinating aspect. But one particular point, you said there are no intervals in new media and you have to be constantly agile. And the previous panel as well, we spoke about the problem or the issue or the challenge of mental health, with PR professionals. It can be quite intimidating. You've got to be live and alive 24/7 to manage situations and stay updated. And we spoke about this particular aspect, but we'll come to it later. I think this is an interesting theme emerging from today's sessions. But I'll actually move on next to Vlad. Vlad, I have a question for you. Will new media replace traditional media at some point? And you had a very clear distinction in your definitions. And if yes, when? If no, why?
Thank you for this question. I think it's a very popular question nowadays, and maybe it was 5 years ago as well. So straight to the point, I think, in my personal opinion, I think it might take 5 generations or around 50 years to pass, to move completely to new media. And obviously, we can see that our children and in some cases grandchildren using different types of new media, and they're not reading newspapers. And therefore, it will take some time to forget about old traditional media. And what I wanted to show, if I may, I found an interesting graph, and Jessica said that I will be able to share it, which will give the answer or possible answer to this question as well. Okay, 1 second. Yes, can you see it okay?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes. So basically, if you look at this graph, you can see the average spend of an average person in minutes per day. So I will just translate it. So therefore, if you look at 2022, the average person was spending 489 minutes on using digital media, new media, and 297 of traditional media. You can see that digital media is taking over, and by 2023, the average person will be spending more than 7.5 hours reading, consuming digital channels and new media. So therefore, I think this trend will continue, and I think you might agree with me. So that's a very good indicator where the new digital media going and the traditional media usage. So also I have another stats that will show what's happening. So in 2020, according to Forbes, the spend for advertising and PR was around $114 billion, and then it shrinked to 104 in 2022. And the new digital media, new media spend was $108 billion, and these global numbers. And in 2021, 172. So basically, you spend on advertising PR placement in 2021 increased by 70%. It's a massive jump, a massive growth trend. So I'll stop sharing the screen now. So basically, I think these numbers and stats don't lie, and the good measurements to understand where we're going. And obviously, just to say one more thing, that it will also depend on the industry, geography, and the culture, where this trend will go rapidly up and where it will slow down. Because we understand that some companies, for example, oil and gas industry, energy industry, old-fashioned energy industry, they're still using print media, and they're still using catalogs and so on. Even if you take defense, they're still using paper-based catalogs, non-digital sometimes. So therefore, it all depends on many factors. But the main trend, I think, in 50 years, and I recommend all of us together catch up in 50 years and see what's going to happen.
I like that, and I hope we have something interesting to talk then. But you know, in this interesting chart that you shared, I could figure out 2 very interesting observations. So one is the crossover really happened in 2017. You know, where new media started to go ahead of traditional media. So you could say it as an inflection year. And the other interesting thing I noticed, Vlad, is it's a very interesting cross that you shared, is that in 2011 versus 2021, the actual time spent on media, I mean, that's a combination of new plus traditional, is actually 20% more than what people were spending in 2011. Now, I don't know how it's going to become maybe in the next 10 to 15 years. We already feel that there is too much media happening. And so is it going to now stabilize or is it going to reduce? So, and that's something that will be quite interesting to see. So will those 500 minutes of new media become 700 minutes and traditional becoming maybe 50 or 100 minutes? We don't know by the end of the time we reach next 50 years. But thanks a lot for sharing those very interesting statistics. It does put a fairly interesting set of perspectives. Moving on to Aaron. Aaron, I have a slightly different question for you. You know, what exactly is new to new media in 2022, and how do you think it's going to impact the future of public relations in the next 5 years? So not thinking next 50, but just next 5 years.
Thank you. Can I also just draft off the last two questions just very, very quickly? Just because they're so interesting.
Sure.
Not that I don't love the question you posited to me. On crisis, I just wanted to say that oftentimes, you know, brands, most well-organized brands and brand teams have already mapped out and parsed the possibility and the probability of a certain crisis that could occur. And yes, because of technology, time has become compressed. I have found, and I started my career in crisis, and I still do a lot of it, you know, 30 years ago in Washington, D.C., I found one of the biggest issues to crisis isn't the PR team, it isn't our strategy, it's getting out of our own way, meaning it is the internal team or our clients who can't make a decision on a statement, and we're fighting over these little words and phrases and things like that. And it's oftentimes the general counsel that is the obstacle. And I believe that new media technologies are available. I happen to know one very well, and others, where you could actually test some of these phrases in a cloud environment before you go to market with them in a real environment. So I think that is very much the future. That's one thing. The second thing, on that really cool graph from eMarketer that Vlad just showed, I actually don't care. And again, I mean this with all the heart in the world. It doesn't matter that everything's going to move to online. We still have to pitch a reporter. That the actual tradecraft of what we do has not changed at all. It's just made it a little bit more difficult because there are more opportunities and more content now online than ever before. We still have to be interesting. We still have to create narrative that's resonant. Now, to answer the real question, sorry, I was drafting off of the others, but they got very good questions. I believe the future in the next 5 years is in augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence. That is complete bullshit. Am I allowed to curse in the WCFA? I can be the American curses. Oh, by the way, that 2017 intersection, that's because America hired a megalomaniac despot who used Twitter to communicate, not traditional media. And I think that the Twitter effect is what you're seeing there in terms of driving online media. But anyway, I think augmented intelligence using data to predict media interest, not just media lists, but media targets, that is absolutely the future in the next 5 years. I really believe that. We all now have access, and I've never been more humbled than actually writing logic and working with developers to put code into a dashboard to try to predict media interest and sentiment. We have access to machine learning. We have access to natural language processing. We can finally predict with greater accuracy now who's going to be interested in our story. And second to that, the next thing that's going to happen is predictive text, GPT-3. And we're seeing The Guardian, we're seeing lots of news organizations doing earnings digests and sports scores using computers, using AI, right? We will do the same to improve our pitches to create more resonance. And I brought a prop. So I think Jessica asked for a slide. I'm going really old school now. And this is for you, Vlad. I don't know how long you've been with Cision. Does anybody remember this beast? It says Cision, but honestly, this is how, when I started 30 years ago, by the way, I look exactly the same, just bald. When I started 30 years ago, this is what we used to have to do. This is just a radio directory. We'd flip through all these pages of data and we tried to figure out who should we pitch. That's what junior people did, right? This is now all online, and that's great. But what now needs to happen is, how can we analyze that data, match our pitch against what reporters have written on in the past, predict what they're going to write about in the future? That is the future. That is not just 5 years. The biggest challenge is upskilling and training PR people in data science. Yes, I said it, data science. Marrying, again, narrative with data. That is the future. And that's why I'm so excited And I basically left my day job, so I'm betting the farm on this. And if I'm wrong, okay, fine. I might be a little bit ahead of it. That's okay too, but we need to push ourselves to perform better using data. Okay, I'm done now.
Great. Yeah, that's quite a big done. And yeah, I like the like the fact that you sort of decided to relabel AI with a different jargon. And I think some of these things will carry on, I think. But what I really like is the idea of retraining the professionals in understanding data science as a key competency to be able to make sense of the world that we are really headed in the next 5 to 10 years. So great. I think very, very interesting set of inputs. And I was just so busy making notes, so much to learn from the 3 panelists. But I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of questions as well from the audience over here. Stuart, of course, you put in an interesting observation here and sharing the recommended reading, Writing on the Wall by Townsend. I haven't read this, but I'm going to read this. It seems like the 2,000 years of the history of social media. And the moment I read that, I felt that I think human behavior really hasn't changed since last 2,000 years. Maybe only the methods keep changing, which we sometimes refer to as new media or traditional media. But any questions for our esteemed panel, on any of the topics that they shared, this would be the perfect time. I think we've timed the panel well so far. We've got about 8 to 10 minutes to get into the Q&A session. So please unmute yourself or just type in the chat. Okay.
I think many people left for dinner already.
Yes, depending on which part they're in. So, Stuart, you have a comment. You want to come in at this stage? Maybe just unmute yourself. Yeah.
I need to hire Stuart as my PR person, I think.
Well, you were far too modest. So I thought, I've had a demo of the product, and I would definitely recommend taking a look at it. I've been watching it for a while now, but I actually loved Aaron's phrase about augmented intelligence, because one of my big bugbears is the number of products out there in the market that claim to be artificial intelligence. They ain't. Trust me. They're using some really clever stuff. There's some data behind it. There's analytics. There's machine learning. But we're not at that kind of artificial intelligence level. And I find it I have far more confidence in suppliers and vendors that are upfront and honest about how clever their product is and don't try to overhype it. And I think there's, just picking up on this kind of whole thing about kind of new media, kind of AI, what the future of communications is. I think there's a lot. I mean, if we were to go around the room now and just do this quick test and ask everybody what their favorite subject was at school, I can guarantee you it would not be maths, or math as Aaron would call it. Creative people, we're all going to say things like languages, history, geography, literature, art. And I think that's the big problem in our industry, because looking at the numbers, looking at the data does not stop you being creative. It actually unlocks the creativity, because it means your creativity is coming from the right places. You're focusing on the right things. You're embracing, you can get ideas from data. There's some really, really clever stuff out there where people have actually taken data and turned it into a story. So yeah, I just think there's loads of opportunities, but it'd be interesting to hear what kind of questions or thoughts other people have.
Stuart, I could tell you my favorite subject was recess. That was my favorite subject in school. Stuart also said something earlier, though, about strategic advisory. And, we're all moving a little bit too quickly. We're not taking enough time to slow down and to think and to be better strategic advisors. And there's also a lot of drudgery in our business, just bullshit, creating media lists, just, we waste time. And obviously that also can be billable dollars for agencies. We waste time doing menial tasks that can be replaced by technology, so we could be better strategic advisors and free us up to do higher value tasks.
Yeah, and that's as long as creativity remains a high value task. The way things go, I think computers are going to be more creative than humans in just a couple of years, and we wouldn't really know what's really high value. But you know, onto this comment, and I know, Aaron, you deeply invested in this idea of predicting media interest before you pitch. You know, this is really a one-side view where you have PR professionals who could be more equipped. But what about the journalist? I mean, you know, you don't want the PR professionals to be ahead of the journalist. You know, you're always trying to get closer to what the journalist wants to focus on. And are they also getting empowered to really write stories which people are going to read, or are we really putting too much power in the hands of the professionals who are really pitching on behalf of brands? And yeah,
so many journalists are determining content now based on search, or because it's affiliate marketing. You know, they're not necessarily as independent as they once were, and with the exception of a few, at least in the States, a few industries like beauty and fashion, relationships are deteriorating. They're becoming commoditized with journalists. So you have no more relationships. There are fewer journalists that are working for organizations. They're working more so for themselves on behalf of multiple organizations. You have deep fakes, misinformation, disinformation contracting newsrooms. You can't just rely on your charm and art of narrative. You also need data to get out ahead of them and to help them do their job. And by the way, if you can predict more and give them the right pitch, they're going to have fewer pitches in their inbox. They're going to like you more, and it actually might save the relationship. That's the circle. That's like the circular, flow that we're trying to approach right now.
Interesting view there. So Tatwik has an observation. Why don't you unmute yourself, Tatwik, and just get into the heat here? Yeah.
Well, I would like just to give a short remark about that. From the other side, PR professionals, especially after COVID situation, when the science comes to the front and everybody understands the role of science and the scientists. So we are working with science and technology world and writing stories, sharing information. So like starting from biotech, from Moderna to everything, so to AI, startups, angel networks. And it's very important because PR professionals also learning and opening new fields after COVID, because it was not so important before that. And when you are talking about vaccination, etc., it's not so interesting for society. But after COVID, of course, it's very important. And to communicate this, we need information, and we need to understand all these issues, the world, the technology and science world. So this is my remark.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Tatwik. And as one of the last questions, and while I'm going to ask this to the three panelists here, but I would actually request all the attendees right now to also type in their response in the chat. And I'm not talking about the latest technology, but I'm talking about which new media is your absolute favorite. What is it that you're rooting for as the media of choice? So and we could start with Vlad, followed by Thabi and then Aaron. And while they're responding, it'll be really nice if all of you could also maybe just type it in the chat. So your favorite new media that you think you're really rooting for, and it'll be interesting to see. It need not be a brand name; it could just be the new media. Yeah.
Okay. Did you ask me? Sorry.
Yes, Vlad. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I'm thinking just not just my favorite, but I think the one that will survive and will stay for another maybe 5-10 years. I think Twitter has a good chance to survive because very kind of urgent news, urgent reactions, and very informative, and has a purpose of informing people, exchanging opinions and communication between opinion leaders and media and the audiences. So it's a different type of audiences engaging to each other. And at the same time, I would say Instagram because of the visuals, because visuals are winning now, and videos and images are taking over, and people would like just to look at the image or video rather than read something. And probably we'll forget how to read very soon because we'll just watch. We'll just watch it and try to digest. So I would say Instagram and Twitter from my side.
Sure, interesting. And I hope Twitter remains the same after and if and when the Musk acquisition happens. And so I'll move on to Thabi. Thabi, which is your favorite new media? Do you have a preference?
Twitter. And because I've got teenage kids, I'm now getting absorbed into the fun that comes with TikTok, and you're beginning to see it moving from a fun platform to some conversational platform. But I think one last element I wanted to introduce on the back of what Aaron was saying is we also need to get to the science of understanding the psychology of the recipient of the information we are distributing in this platform. And so as PR professionals, perhaps instead of chasing the platforms, we must also bring in over and above data science, the psychology of human beings, because beyond all these platforms, and I'm sure there's going to be thousands as more and more young people are developing them, we need to understand what drives acceptance, what drives people staying in those platforms, and what keeps them reading what kind of data in those platforms. And I think that may give us as a professional, as a profession, a competitive advantage.
Thank you, Thabi. Yeah. Over to you, Aaron. Do you have a preference? Do you like any?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I don't like first, which is both a marketplace and potentially media, which is the metaverse. That is dumb. And I hope it just dies quickly in the same way that some other things have. But I'm going to have a different answer, which is less B2C and more B2B. I think LinkedIn continues to have a lot of value, not just as a network, but as actually new media, both user generated as well as curated by professionals. And I continue to have a lot of hope and trust. If you said to me, I have to lose every platform, which one would I keep? It would be LinkedIn.
It's interesting, and I think while you were speaking, Stuart also spoke about professional platforms, and he speaks about niche platforms like Guild, which is quite fascinating. But another direction. I mean, just as a closing remark, so a lot of the new media that we see today is still very, very centralized, with a lot of control of the data in the hands of the media platform. And I think somewhere in the chat, I read a comment from an attendee around the idea of creating Web3 new media platforms or Web3 social media platforms. And when that happens, I think some of the current ideas will be challenged extensively. And hopefully we won't have to wait 50 years for that. Probably by the time we get onto the Davos Communications Summit next year, we should be talking that. But for now, I'll actually pass the virtual mic on to Tatavik to really summarize our event today and lead us to the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, dear colleagues and friends, first and foremost, I would like to thank all presenters and participants who have joined our summit across the world. It is an honor for me to sum up our insightful discussions on behalf of Spring PR Company and as advisory board member of WCFA Global. And it is undeniable that during these 3 hours, we have had fruitful discussions on very important topics. What will our new normal look like? And also, this is the main question that both business and government leaders seek to answer these days. And yes, we communication PR professionals are not an exception. In this annual gathering of Davos Online Communications Summit, the main theme was also new circumstances and working attitudes that are shifting after COVID-19 pandemic. We have learned really a lot from the very comprehensive and informative keynote session devoted to post-pandemic tools and ideas how to quickly change the business. Thank you, Francis, for a great keynote speech. And of course, our panel discussions addressing the issues, the key role of PR in the global recovery. and transformations of social media, platforms of the future, and new media delivered by very respectable professionals of our field. And yes, let's state that now we are in boundaries of, let's say, turning point for PR profession, because the changed perception, we are no more a let's say service provider or a consultant, but a decision maker, a core equal partner for the client. And now we are working mainly with the CEOs and our business founders. We are board members of companies who are working with, and partners of organizations we cooperate with. And yes, public relations is not about only communications, but reputation building. And PR professionals are becoming strategic advisors for the partner organizations to achieve their mission. And this is a positive transformation for the perception of our profession. Especially our discussions reaffirmed the importance of applying the environmental, social, and corporate governance goals as a key approach for the socially responsible business. And yes, the Russian-Ukraine war and prior that the war in Nagorno-Karabakh, where my people suffered, came to prove that as a part of an international community, we have a duty to work aligned with sustainable development goals aimed at ensuring well-being of all people across the world. And this is very important. And this crisis had a crucial role in bringing strategic advice to the front line and proving that having strategy, full communication strategy, including crisis communications, is a must, also reinforcing trust and bringing relations, forming interesting new partner cooperation model, which is forming, and we can discuss maybe next year in person. And as international research state, and as Stuart mentioned, the last research by CIPR about growing industry standing still shows that recruitment responses suggest in general business is booming for public relations and across all organization types, teams growing, then reducing in size, but those responsible for recruiting are struggling to find or attract the right talent. As Francis mentioned, the talent attraction and retaining is the #1 challenge that our global community faces worldwide. And the companies are trying to establish policies and programs, of course, aimed at reducing employee turnover. And of course, businesses looking for strategically minded decision maker PR professionals to attract in their teams. When talking about social media platforms of the future, one thing that is very important about this is that it transformed to a platform where everybody can promote services, sell and buy goods. And the most important, various social platforms act as an online representation of a person or a company, giving a chance to form a personal brand. And we cannot ignore new developments and trends in this sphere too. We as PR professionals mainly use these tools to reach out our various target groups. And yes, if our target is in TikTok, mostly the Generation Z, so we need to go there. But along this power to promote the brands, of course, social networks can also destroy the reputation of the organization. Here is the responsibility that social networks should be forced to take. From individual perspective, media literacy and education are essential for our societies to practice not to be harmed from very wrongdoings. And then when we are talking about new media and PR, even though the traditional media continues to play, of course, a vital role in the dissemination of information, it is increasingly being influenced by online content and interactions. In the era of risking fake news, it's a challenge. PR professionals have a responsibility to help their audiences to figure out what is fake news and what is right information, what comes to the new media and its future. Of course, one of the key issues is to clarify our role in the context where everybody is a communicator and find solutions to deal with it, especially in crisis management. So thank you for sharing such important insights and your expertise from various parts of our planet so that all of us can deepen our knowledge about above mentioned topics and can be applied by us in our own countries and in our everyday activities. Finally, I would like to thank Maxim and all the committee members for organizing this amazing summit. And I'm summarizing it with a hope to meet all of you in person next year. Have a nice day, evening, night, whatever is it in the part of the world you are. Thank you and see you next time.
Well, thank you very much for that amazing summary. And thank everybody that stayed throughout the whole summit. We've had some wonderful kind of contributions, both from the people that were speakers and from some of the questions and contributions that we've had. I don't think there's much more I actually need to summarize because you did such a brilliant job of it. But what I do want to do is to encourage you all to go to the World Communication Forum Association website, and if you're not yet a member, sign up and join, or at least join our mailing list, because that way you'll get your invitation to go to Davos, where I very much hope that we will all be next year. This is a photograph from the very first time I went to the World Communication Forum Association. So you can see it was in the winter, it was in March. I think from memory, it was in 2013. It may have been the year before or the year afterwards. I couldn't quite work out from my photograph, but hopefully we'll see you all there next year, because although we've had some amazing discussions today and in the previous 2 online summits, there is nothing beats getting together and actually being in the room. And Davos makes that really special. If you've never been to Davos or experienced an event there, you won't know that. It's totally different to going to a conference or an event in most cities, because Davos is small enough to be intimate. So you're going to spend time with the other delegates and the speakers in the bars and the restaurants and the cafes, and you really get to know people, and you'll be able to form lifelong friendships. I'm looking around the room now, and there are some people that I've met in Davos, and I kind of still know and consider friends and colleagues today. It's a business opportunity. I've had work and clients from going there. So I would encourage you all to consider going. I think with that, I will wrap up and thank everybody for their contributions. The session is recorded, so I'm hoping, and I will double check this with Maxim, that there is going to be a recording available on the World Communication Forum Association YouTube channel eventually. It doesn't usually take them too long to get that out, but hopefully that means you can share it with kind of friends and colleagues who've missed one of the sessions, or if you joined us late or had to leave early, it will be available to you. So thank you again, everybody, and look forward to seeing you in Davos next year.